well, and I don't think we produce like that piece of it. Like we've been coerced. So I think when we're looking at how we get back into it, we gotta have the want to have a better life for the next 30 generations. Like we aren't even talking about that. We having gender wars online about who's right to this.
50-50.
Yeah, 50-50 this, 50-50 that. Like, I want all of this. It's remedial and it's immature behavior on our end, because not only do we do that, what else can't we do? We can't feed ourselves. Like, we're essentially in a state where we're being looked at by other people. It's so interesting seeing how other groups of people look at us. And whenever I go into a room of people who aren't black, you know how long it take them to accept I'm a farmer, because they don't even associate black people with producing food, producing for themselves.
The original farmers.
They don't do it. We are like, we built these systems. Like, look, we need to recontextualize Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. We need to do it, and it's beyond the George Washington Carver being the man over
Peanut man.
Yeah, the peanut man. Like, look at the sweet potatoes, the peanuts, crop rotation, the Jessup wagon. Look at the higher science that he was an avid painter. Like, he was a multi-genius. And I read a story that when they started the lab at Tuskegee for research, he went through the trash to get their original material. Like, we gotta recontextualize it. Even his upbringing is really interesting too, because he had a really high voice, and there were theories around why he had. Like, we gotta recontextualize these people, these men, these leaders, so that we have a present idea of what to do today. The man who proposed the CSA model, community supported agriculture, is when a farmer can get their money up front in the season. You can say it's 6 items. He or she can offer them to you at a retail price per item. So instead of going to the market only buying kale from, you can buy kale, carrots, turnips, the things you need. It can be worth $30. It's a subscription. The man who proposed that model, his name is Booker T. Watley. And he has a book on how to make 100,000 on 25 acres. It's an older book, but he has a model on how to build farms. It needs to be contextualized because we're in a different time. But these things have been brought to us already. We're just choosing, or a part of us doesn't know, but the behavior, and when I see what we're attracted to on the internet, isn't going to get us closer to producing food from the people who we are following. Everybody's doing their thing, don't get me wrong, but when we're talking about food systems, we aren't, that hasn't been a piece that we've decided that we want to be attracted to want to collectively do and collectively participate in.
Wow. I'm blown away, man. And it's, to your point, like, me and my wife, my friends, we have that same conversation. Like, if you think about our great grandfathers, right? Our big daddies, big mamas, they built their own homes that are still standing. Yep. They grew their own crops. They knew how to make their own clothes, all of these things. Us today, with more technology, we know how to do way less. That's a problem. We've been dumbed down intentionally, yep. Right? What is that process of deconstructing being dumbed down? Because, bro, to your point, schools like a FAMU, they have agriculture in the name. Alabama A&M, that's agriculture.
North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University.
But then nobody's majoring, to your point, in agriculture.
What I think we can do is learn how to, the model of farming that we utilize at the farm, I didn't learn in college. I had to learn it. I met another black farmer, Howard Allen, down in Chapel Hill. Well, he's south of me, and he taught me, so he introduced structure, and I learned A, B, and all right, we can do this, modify A, B, and C, but the models look the same. So that's how I didn't learn it in college. The bees, I knew the former head of one of the largest bee organizations. I met him in the world. He taught me the science of keeping bees. So I had to learn these things from outside people, and it wasn't an educational process that taught it to me. So I think when we're looking at our HBCUs, we gotta talk to them about revamping and updating these programs so they can, so a graduate can go out and be an integral part of a food system, or learn how to produce food in a way where it's like in an urban ag setting. We're I think we gotta have those talks, and I'm open to talk with a FAMU. A&T was just at my farm this summer, where they where the vice provost came out. to the farm, and we got a picture of her and the bees. Like, so I'm open to having a conversation. I would love to, but we got to get back to being able to produce the thing, the change that we need. We don't have the process of that anymore. Like when I was at A&T, I was the president of Black History Club. The type of conversations that we had with students, we're trying to get a mandatory Black Studies program, and the university didn't want to have it. When I go talk to graduates from other universities and tell them that, they're like, "What? Like, what do you?
How's my minor, man?
Like, yeah. Like, how's there no mandatory Black Studies program at HBCU?" So I know that they'll say, "Oh, we're bringing a new graduate and blase blah," but where's our identity? So how are we still going to associate ourselves with the institution if we don't have an identity and correlate it to it? So I think that whole piece of us looking at how our grandparents or our great-grandparents or our uncles, our great-uncles could build foundations to a home. They were homeschooled. They're going to produce the food. There was an identity associated with it. There's a sense of ownership associated with
that land.
To the land.
Wow.
We don't. What can we say our identity is connected to in the present day as Black people here in America?
To the block.
And that's why, you're right, it is the block, and that's why everybody wants to be a gangster. You got college-educated brothers and sisters acting like they from the block. And I work with kids from the hood. I work with kids who, I got a kid on the farm now that been to the feds, and he ain't even 22 yet. And we had these conversations. So when I see them talking and knowing their backstories, knowing what's happened to them in their lives, and the association that college-educated people make to that lifestyle, you're right, it's because we don't have an identity. And those brothers and sisters that come from the block look like they do. Yeah. Like, because they can say, I'm this or that, and A, B, and C. But then when it comes to, we just like, because you don't know you work, like, you're not a part of Apple. You're not a part of the corporate infrastructure because they can get rid of you at any moment. What do we say we're aligned to? It used to be we wanted to say it for the universities, but now they're changing. So you can't say that. So what do we say we're attached to?
Bro, this is heavy, man. Unemployment, right? Millennials, Gen Z is at an all-time high. The job market is terrible, right? Like, we see so many people who graduate from college and they can't get a job even in their own field, because now you got Gen Xers and even boomers almost that's still working as the exec, as the president, as the supervisor. So there's no room for corporate growth, right? So now, man, I'm seeing people who are college educated, master's degree that's working at Amazon. That's manual labor. So it's like, do you think that they're better off just getting into farming where they can actually grow their own food to learn a skill set?
That's a great question. Yes and no. Because it depending where you at, you're going to go work on a farm now. And depending where you at, it's going to dictate how that structure is with you and the farm owner. And you really could be thinking like, man, I feel like it's 1865. Yeah. But if you want to go into it and think about like what can I get out of it to go do my own thing, I think that's the approach that we need to have right now. Because if the immigration crackdown continues, there are going to be vacancies. But the ethic and what it takes, like working on large farms and doing things by hand and at the rate and consistency, it's gonna take some time for us to get. It's difficult. Yeah. I do think it would be important for us to learn different models of farming, maybe on a smaller scale like we do at our farm, where it's high yield in a smaller area, the urban, and then grow the farms out to that. Yeah. Because then there's also machinery and automation that's coming in now. So all these things have been like rolled out. I remember being in a meeting years ago, and there was like a farmer of the future, and he was talking about all the AI that was gonna come into the farms. And he still talk now, and still does presentations. And I was sitting there looking at him. One of my close friends, his name is Devin. We were in the meeting together, and we were like, man, that's gonna be crazy. Now it's here. Like the autonomous piece is here. So I think it's best for us to try to acquire some land where we can and look at building those systems there. And we might need another migration of Black folk in the country now. Yes. to adapt to the time. Like, it's not a one size fits all. Maybe we keep what we got where we are, and then we move to look up and revitalize areas that have been historically neglected, like a Detroit. So I think that it's one of those things where, to your point, we are doing manual labor. Why can't we do it in the realm of us producing the food? Like, we got to change our mind around that.
Bro, for sure, man. AI, I didn't even think about that. How does AI impact farming? Because, bro, I use it every single day,
Yep.
you know, with tech media, but it's like, I didn't think about farming. So, how does technology pair with farming with that?
We got a machine at the farm. It's called a Gita. We did some content creation, and the Gita can follow you. It's like an autonomous robot that can follow you. It doesn't handle the terrain as well, but I know something else can be developed. I've seen autonomous robots on the farm that the farmer can sit on. They can just plant and go. They're like 17,000 right now. And I noticed with the technology, it gets lower and lower year by year. At the more it gets refined, I think they'll have humanoid robots on farms in the next 5 to 10 years. So the entry point that is upon us, they have machines that can go over, that can pick the right apple or the one that's damaged. It'll leave it and it'll pick the one that can go to market. They have NVIDIA just put out a machine that can go over and zap all the weeds with like laser technology, but leave the crop that you want. So the autonomous piece is here. We're gonna have to adapt or integrate it, because if the void between, like, the average age of a farmer is like 65 or 68 years old, and the new generation isn't going in, the only thing that can fill that gap is a new group, a generation going in, or AI, because the food's gonna get produced. So I think as far as what it's doing now, it's years ahead. So we're looking at a compounding issue that then we throw in the climate into it. I remember when I first started beekeeping, it would get cold around November and get warm again in March. Now we're having warm snaps in January, February. The bees start consuming their resources. Then they starve out. You got to go feed them because they thought it was going to be spring. You got to feed them to keep them alive, to get them into the to the springtime. So when we're looking at where all these things happen at one time, we got to refocus and we got to recalibrate to see what we can do.
Kamal, with this question, it could be somewhat, you know, controversial, but do you feel like if we had more black farmers, we wouldn't have as much of food deserts and issues when it comes to things like global warming? Because, bro, I think about crop rotation, right? I think about George Washington Carver, how he helped save this entire industry throughout this country. Do you feel like if we were in more positions of power, that we wouldn't be in this position today as a country?
If we had more black people that had the consciousness of a George Washington Carver, or of a Booker T. Washington, of a Booker T. Watley, of a Fannie Lou Hamer, of an Elijah Muhammad, like, I think of a Malcolm X,
It's
of
the
a Martin
mindset
Luther King.
first.
It's the mindset. So I think, because one thing that I do see, you can have a black face of white power. Like, it's not difficult to do that. And as Amos Wilson will talk and lecture about, the ruling and dominant class always pulls up a few from the oppressed class to give you an illusion. So I think when we look at that, I think one part of it would be having black people with the right consciousness in place, and we need black people in politics with the right consciousness as well. I would think historically that has changed from like a Reconstruction era till now. That's like a whole other conversation, but I do think we have people who are willing to listen. Like, we've met with the vice president before to talk about agriculture. And so, like, what was funny about that, everything that people were saying, like, online, it was funny, because when you meet somebody, you're just like, how you come up with this idea? Like, did you meet the person, or are you just going off of what you're seeing? Or unless I guess you got like an inside person. I guess you have one, but all that stuff is interesting. But there was an interest in being able to say, hey, how can I support you all? What are your needs? Because the meeting, they didn't have to meet with us. Like how I saw Boosie talking about how the Trump administration, the person over the partners, met with him for his case. And like, they didn't have to meet with him. So when we got a meeting, like, they didn't have to meet with, like, VP Harris didn't have to meet with us. Like, Vice President Harris did not have to meet with us, and they did. So the administration did. So I think that when it comes down to change, having more of us with the right consciousness is something that I think will help. But we gotta, like, how do we get to that point? We gotta read. We definitely gotta start reading. I know we like reading like powerful quotes on the internet that make us feel independent. I know we like that. Like, that's great. But we got to start reading the Ivan Van Sertima's, the Amos Wilsons, the Gerald Masseys, like, who gives a really good history on ancient Kemet. The Anthony T. Browders, who I think is a great, contribution to Nile-Valley civilization is a great place to start, just so we can start to repattern. And I know I'm not listening to everybody, I'm just giving out what comes to my mind. We got to get back to agreed upon principles, because right now any group can sway us any way to do anything. And because once again, it comes down to how we view ourselves. We got to get a collective consciousness around agreed upon concepts that we don't deviate from.
Powerful, bro. In an earlier interview, just from seeing your story, you said one line where our food, it has a story. What story do you want the food that comes from Sankofa Farms to tell for the people as well? The
food from Sankofa, I want it to be a story of liberation and the breaking of generational trauma and curses. Because as we're building up the farm, my wife is a birth doula. Like, I would argue that my wife Amber work is more revolutionary than mine.
Y'all killing it, man.
Because she is helping Black women birth and bring babies into the world. So I think but we've been able to collaborate and offer like CSA boxes to women pre and postpartum, and that because our area, even though there's Duke, UNC, there's NC State, but they really don't have they're not really I'll say Wake Med. So Duke has a hospital, UNC and Wake Med, and the infant mortality and the death rate among Black women after pregnancy is so high there. And so she went and became a doula. She's been to Cuba to learn and visit the healthcare system there. So I think through the farm, we've been able to have the flexibility, because I got to think about, if I didn't have the farm, I wouldn't be here right now. I'm a former school teacher. I'll be in the classroom most likely. So we've been able to get out of break systems and introduce our kids. Now we got a 8-year-old author. So I think that's what I want the story of the farm to be. So then once we get to a point of, we get to an equilibrium, then we can start the next wave of work. It's gonna take generations to get out of this. I'm still trying to get my family to get more involved. Like we've been talking about, we got 12 acres. So, and like an idea of that would be like 12 football fields. About a football field is about an acre. We got 12 football fields. I'm looking at seeing we can get our family moved. We can bring our family back together. I got a brother, he got 4 boys. I got 4 boys. My parents, so we can bring back our family, like and start becoming and thriving and living in community once again.
You just talked about something, man, that's very important, because hearing you, even say that, I think about my own family as well. And I'm like, bro, all of us in the South have similar thoughts at this point, because growing up, my great-grandparents, grandmothers, all of them lived on the same plots of land. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, that's multi-generational living, where everybody's putting into the pot, opposed to us being in separate households. The cost of living's going up. Now y'all can pitch in and live on the same piece of land, grow the food. That cuts all the expenses to a tenth. But yeah, bro, like, how do we start changing that just overall thought process of, okay, I'm not going to be over here. I'm living 30 minutes away from auntie. She live over there, when all of us still hang out on Thanksgiving. On Christmas, we're always over each other's homes. Why not build together?
If it's a funeral, we all coming back, and we're doing the thing that has been absent amongst us, and that's building a community. I think by us building models, and then figuring out how, it's like kind of like how I figure out how to buy land. Like once I figured the process out, I was able to buy it. So I think it's figuring out what we then have to do to get the homes up there. Do we need to annex 3 acres, and then how we get the building permits? The land doesn't perk. Do we need to, like, what does that mean for the septic system? What kind of systems I think it's a temple of the how to. And I think one thing that has happened with Black farmers, we've kind of existed in a silo, and we haven't collaborated with the real estate people. We haven't collaborated with the construction institutions. We haven't brought these institutions back to the farm, which we have to do, but it would make sense if we already knew how to do it. I think that's how we're operating, as if we have the the family that can build the foundation, that can cut the lumber, that can frame the house. Like we're operating like that, but the context now is different. So how do we bring back those resources back and to the farm so we can add it, we can repurpose it to what we need it to be in 2025?
I'm enjoying this conversation, bro. And, you know, talking again about the food setup, all of those things. Once we do set that up, seeing you, man, you operate as a businessman, entrepreneur too. How do we apply business savviness towards farming? Because I think people think farmers, like you said earlier, are just poor and they just work hard all day. But how can you be also business savvy and a farmer all at the same time?
Yeah, I learned this really from my mentor, the one who taught me, Farmer Howard. That's what I call him. Because he has a really interesting story, but he is really poignant with numbers and like detail. And I saw that piece on my art. I'm gonna have to have that to an extent to be able to build this out. I also think it's down to learning, because I necessarily, I think I'm more of an entrepreneur than I actually like a farmer per se. So like that's, we got the book, we have an Airbnb called Bees in the Trap. Like we bring people out to the farm and show them how to beekeep. I'm public speaking. So I think my mind operate like, if someone would have asked me 15 years ago, what do you want to be? I wouldn't necessarily, well, that was college. 20 years ago, I've been 14. I wouldn't have said a farmer. But I just saw that we needed it in our community. So like the savviness piece around it, I think just comes with learning how to build systems and learning how to implement systems, because I know I can look at something and be like, I think they can do this better. Like I can't even be, I don't even have to be a part of that field. So my mind is more like, okay, how can we build more productive systems? And I think that's where like the other entrepreneurial piece comes in. And it's just because you started with something that's real difficult. So I'm not gonna say other things aren't hard in farming, but I'm at the behest of Mother Nature, of a higher power, every single day. So I think it's more humbling too, because I know I don't control anything. Like I'm just trying to exist within a system of something far greater than me. So I think everything else falls in line after I check my ego, because I can't have it in that sense, because I have to come to a realization that I don't grow the crops. I might provide the environment, but I don't dictate the weather. So I know Jay Electronica would disagree based on his last. I listened to Jay Electronica on the farm, especially with his new albums coming out. But I think that when it comes down to like factors I can't control directly, I think that you got to check that ego at the door, because you can feel like you got the best crops one day and the pests come through. They've been laying eggs the whole time, and since you've been gloating, you forgot to take care and mitigate the caterpillars hatching and eating up your crops. Then you start seeing pest damage. So that ego, it gets checked. So I think that contributes to like trying to have a savviness around it.
Yes, sir. Mother Nature, hearing about that crop rotation, I thought about that again. What exactly was that system by George Washington Carver to
So
rotate?
what happens with an area of land? There's a period that nutrients have to be introduced back into the soil, whether that's through a natural means, by cover cropping. It's just kind of like the idea of like a forest. All the decomposing leaves are essentially the fertilizer. After they decompose, burn into the soil. That's why trees get so big. Like they're growing in the spot where it's high. It's a high nutrient density. So land is the same way. If you're putting a crop, especially the same, that needs the same amount of nutrients, and it doesn't put anything back, and you're doing that over and over, it depletes the soil. So if you have one crop that's nitrogen fixing, like a clover, and then you need a corn next, the nitrogen from the clover gets deposited into the soil, and the corn comes and absorbs it, then it grows. But then after that, you got to put something else back there, like a clover or another. The science is so high on that now, it can be a hairy vetch mix, but you need to keep crops in a consistent pattern so they don't deplete the soil. So you can't just grow one thing in one spot and think that you're going to have an abundant crop without adding something back in. So being able to rotate crops, it limits the nutrient deficiency and also the pest piece as well, because if a pest can come back to the same area and it can lay its eggs and it knows where it's going to be. And then once that crop, the density of the pests gets so high, it's hard to grow the crop there. So all those things help. And then it helps with the environmental piece too, because you're not being as extractive in the area. And then other microorganisms can live. And then it creates an environment where other organisms can live. So you create another system there.